The narcissist is looking for your agreeableness and your conscientiousness. The agreeableness ensures you stay, and the conscientiousness keeps you there. That quote came from a prominent creator in the narcissistic abuse recovery space, someone with a doctorate, large reach, and apparent authority. It's concise, it sounds clever, and it lands with a kind of satisfying snap. Ah, of course, it's my traits. That's the problem. That's why it happened. But that's the issue. This kind of content is why survivors stay stuck, because it replaces depth with description and collapse with personality profiling. It points to the external behavior without understanding the internal structure. It nods to what's visible while completely ignoring the symbolic architecture of the collapse itself. This is not recovery language. It's diagnostic shorthand dressed as wisdom. And it does not explain what happened to you. Surface level descriptors are keeping survivors stuck. If you're a survivor of narcissistic abuse, you already know it wasn't as simple as being too agreeable. You didn't just smile too much or say yes too often. You were psychologically co opted. You were mirrored, idealized, and then inverted. Your internal world was slowly restructured to reflect their fantasy, until your own truth, needs, and even your own sense of self became secondary, distorted, or totally eclipsed. In MPIT, mirrored psychic inversion theory, we don't start by listing your traits. We start by asking, what got severed? What got hijacked? What got reversed? Because you weren't chosen for your agreeableness. You were chosen because the narcissist could detect, even unconsciously, the absence of symbolic defense, that you had been conditioned to collapse into others, and the collapse wasn't about being nice, it was about survival. Agreeableness is a symptom, not a cause. Empit sees so-called agreeableness as a surface symptom of a deeper trauma adaptation. Most survivors have had early relational dynamics that required them to be the regulator of someone else's affect. You may have been the easy one, the peacemaker, the good kid. You learned often before language that love came through pleasing, absorbing, calming, or not needing. That trait, which might get labelled as being agreeable, is actually part of a far more complex inner configuration. In MPIT, this includes the Redeemer complex, the belief that your role is to rescue others emotionally in order to secure love, the introject enforcer, the internalized critical voice demanding perfection, silence, or sacrifice, the ASR3, the anticipatory shadow reflex, the part of you that preemptively braces for abandonment and modifies itself accordingly. You were not just agreeable, you were pre written to sacrifice yourself for connection. And the narcissist didn't notice your traits. They mirrored them back to you, idealized your sacrifice, and locked you into a fantasy where your lack of boundaries felt like devotion. Conscientiousness isn't what keeps you there, collapse does. Let's talk about conscientiousness, responsibility, follow through, emotional diligence. All good things, right? Now imagine all of that has been turned inward. Imagine your sense of moral obligation is used against you. Imagine you're trying to be the bigger person, trying to stay regulated, trying to make the relationship work, while your reality is slowly being dismantled, reframed, and inverted. This isn't conscientiousness keeping you there. This is collapse. In MPIT, we call this reflexive mirrored psychic inversion, or MPI, the core mechanism of symbolic collapse. Here, the narcissist becomes your new point of orientation. You begin to filter your own reality through their affective response. You are no longer responding to the world. You're reacting to their gaze, their moods, their absence, their coldness, their idealization, their contempt. You're not staying because you're too responsible. You're staying because you've lost symbolic coherence and your psyche is trying to reassemble itself through the person who took it apart. That's not personality, that's psychic survival. The survivor's collapse, a symbolic architecture. To truly understand what happened to you, to recover, we need to know more than traits. We need a symbolic map, a map that includes the ASR nucleus, the original stress reflex created during early emotional annihilation, the shared fantasy, the psychological space co-authored between you and the narcissist, symbolic annihilation, the feeling of being emotionally deleted in real time, CIPR, collapse induced psychotic regression, where all meaning inverts, interject co option, where the narcissist's voice replaces your own internal narrative, the hall of mirrors, the mirrored ego trap you were pulled into and cannot exit without symbolic rupture, the organizing gate, the psychic point where perception meets meaning and splits. No Instagram caption is going to give you that. No TikTok breakdown is going to deliver that depth. And that's what MPIT was built to do. You weren't weak, you were written into a shared fantasy. And here's the truth: you weren't too nice, you weren't too responsible, you weren't naive. You were pulled into a co authored psychic performance that mirrored your unmet needs, reflected your fears, and temporarily made you feel whole until it inverted. And now you're not just trying to heal from abuse, you're trying to rebuild the symbolic structure of your reality. You're trying to reclaim authorship of your own mind. That's not a trait issue, that's a collapse issue. Recovery is not about traits, it's about coherence. Input doesn't just validate your pain, it gives you a language to name it, a structure to map it, and a framework to reverse it. Because healing from narcissistic abuse isn't about insight, it's about symbolic reintegration. That reintegration starts when you stop asking, was I too agreeable? And start asking, where did I disappear? This is the difference between being labelled and being understood. This is the difference between content and a return to selfhood. This is the work, and you're already doing it. Peace out. Loads of love.